Hi Internet. So yeah, let's start. Some play well and some play the second fiddle, meaning they are not important, but if you think about it, one human was the first one to ever play any instrument, and he probably didn't even know it. And to you, random human, I say congratulations. That is actually better than a record. Speaking of records, there is for sure a mosquito that sucked out more blood than any mosquito ever in the history of the earth, and to him, I would congratulate, but I won't because I hate mosquitoes. When biting, mosquitoes inject saliva while taking up blood. Saliva with its enzymes is recognized as a foreign substance, and the immune system tries to get it under control by flushing histamine to the spot. And the histamine is the molecule that actually causes the swelling and the itchiness. And by the way, the needle mosquitoes use, it's called proboscis. And things itch and hurt more at night, since cortisol, or the stress hormone, a anti-inflammatory hormone, is not produced as much during the night. Cortisol is actually produced in the cortex of the adrenal gland. The human body is a fascinating thing, and by the way, if you think about it, your whole skeleton is currently wet, and also has 206 bones, the biggest one being femur, and the smallest one being stapes, located in the middle ear. So your skeleton is pulled by muscles, and muscles and bones are connected with tendons. So you could say that tendons are a type of strings, right? Yeah, just like the banana has those pesky annoying strings nobody likes. Well, they also have a name. Phloem bundles, and bananas do indeed need them, as they supply the banana with nutrients needed for growth. And if you really think about it, everything in the universe is either a banana or is not. Weird, right? Moving on, bananas are fruit, and so are tomatoes, cucumbers, olives, chili, peppers, pumpkins, squash, eggplant, corn, beans, and peas. Damn, but also why? Well, fruits are seed-bearing structures that developed from the ovary of the plant, whereas vegetables are everything else, so roots, leaves, and stems, making everything mentioned, fruit. And speaking of fruit and veggies, the first smoothie was invented by Julius Fried in the 1920s, which he shared with his friends, and the popularity just grew, I guess. The smoothies also spread quickly, as this was also the time when blenders were first invented. This gentleman, Stephen Poplawski, invented the first one in 1922, and Fred Waring built up on the idea and commercialized the product, and started selling it in 1937, creating a product named Waring Blender. And speaking of blenders, mixing, and fruit, have you ever noticed that most fruit are actually round-ish? Well, fruits are mostly round, since a sphere is the geometric body that holds most volume with the least surface. And also, if they fall, a round object is more likely to roll and sprout somewhere away from the tree. Roundness? Rocks. And planets are not round, they are actually slightly elliptic. And if you think about it, most of the sky is actually below your feet. And speaking of the sky, it is actually divided into 5 layers. So the first one is troposphere, with planes, hot air balloons, and everything we normally see. Stratosphere is where you have the famous ozone layer, one that absorbs the UV rays. The next one is mesosphere, where you actually have some metals still lingering from meteors. And the next two are called thermosphere and exosphere, which are together known as ionosphere, where you basically have ions which are formed due to UV radiation by photoionization or photodissociation of air and ozone molecules. So basically you have charged molecules formed because of light. Simple. And speaking of layers, that is exactly what they do. They lay on one another. Just like glue lays on things, but why doesn't the glue stick on the inside of the bottle, for example? Well, firstly, what even is in glue? Well, polyvinyl acetate, ethanol, acetone, and water. The water evaporates as the glue leaves the bottle, and without water, the glue dries and stiffens. Consequently, glue with water inside the bottle does not stick, since it isn't evaporating, making it stay, liquid. So yeah, you can say that there are many layers to this. And of course, Earth isn't the only planet with layers. And speaking of planets, the word planet comes from Greek, planetein, meaning to wonder, since the Greeks didn't know how the planets precisely behaved and they thought they, wondered. And there is actually an archaic word, planetikos, an adjective, describing one that wonders. Okay, so why do we call planets like, we do? Where did they get their names? Okay, so let's go one by one with some interesting facts. Mercury, messenger of the Roman gods, since the Greeks saw that the planet would reappear quickly. Venus, goddess of love and beauty. Earth, the only planet without a deity's name. It actually comes from Anglo-Saxon word erda, meaning ground or soil. Mars, god of war. Jupiter, the biggest one in the sky, and that's where it got its name, from the Jupiter, king of the Roman gods. Saturn, god of harvest and time of reaping, and the father of Jupiter. When Galileo first saw this planet with his telescope, he thought he saw 3 planets because of the rings that looked like handles to him. Uranus, Johann Elert Bode, a German astronomer, named him after the god Uranus, father of Saturn and the grandfather of Jupiter, since these 2 planets were discovered before this one. Neptune, the Roman god of the sea, since it is blue like the sea. And Pluto, today taken as a dwarf planet, got its name from the Greek god of wealth who ruled the dark underworld. But Earth is the one with most water, having its 71% of surface covered with water. We breathe air and we do not see it, but we see water. And what if fish do not see water but do see air? Well, study of fish is called ichthyology. Fish were able to be kept safely as pets after 1853, when aeration and filtration of water were understood. And every up until then would just, die out. Study of birds is called ornithology. Ravens actually became known as birds of death, since they intelligently followed around armies, knowing very well that an army marching meant dead bodies and, consequently food. And why don't we ever see baby pigeons? Well, they are kept in nests until they grow completely. And pigeons were actually grown in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago, where they were basically domesticated and simply spread around the world's cities. That's why we have so many of them today, everywhere. And they actually have so-called tetrachromic eyes, meaning that they have 4 cones for color vision, red, blue, green, and UV, whereas humans lack the UV cones. Study of snakes is herpetology, and snakes actually do not have eyelids, and they do not traditionally bite food, forcing them to actually swallow things whole. And they also do not have noses. They use an organ called the Jacobson organ, located at the top of their mouth, directing small particles with their tongue. That's why they, do that thing with their tongue. And we all know that pythons kill prey by wrapping and suffocating them. The process is called constriction. Entomology is the study of insects, and arachnology is the study of spiders. Melitology is the study of bees, and cetology is the study of whales, but enough with these studies. I will talk about spiders. Spiders are actually not insects, but ants are. Ants always have 6 legs and spider 8. Spiders can actually self-amputate their legs without bleeding to death. The process is called autotomy. And even if a venom is injected into a spider's leg, the spider can actually amputate it fast enough so that the venom doesn't reach his body. Of course, they can regrow the lost leg, but, it will be shorter and thinner. You cannot win always. And spiders are not insects, they are arachnids. Their silk is made out of proteins, more specifically 2 amino acids, glycine and alanine. And just like animals do not know that they are located and living in these weird constructs humans call countries, perhaps we do not know that some alien species owns us and we are on their property, just like a bug on a leaf somewhere in California is, just doing its own thing, munching that leaf away. Okay, our planet has 197 countries. The word country comes from Latin contra terra, meaning opposite land, and passport, well, from French passer, meaning to pass, and port, meaning door. Japan has the strongest passport, allowing visa-free travel to 191 countries, and the weakest one is Afghanistan's, with only 26 visa-free countries to travel to. Most passports are of red and blue color, and the only person that doesn't need a passport when traveling is the Queen Elizabeth II. And yes, that is her riding a horse with Ronald Reagan. And on the other part of the spectrum you have mummies which needed passports. Yeah, no kidding. When sending the mummified body of Ramses II, Egyptian government issued a passport for it, so they could send it to France. And only after the First World War were the pictures in passports obligatory. Up until then you had passports with no pictures, only, text. So if you like traveling, it really does not pay off to be born in Afghanistan. And while we're on the topic of being born, I will give you 2 things to think about before I go. Your first birthday is actually your second, and each year the anniversary of your death rolls by without you even knowing it. Anyways guys, thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Ciao!